Today's daf we're going to be learning is Sanhedrin Daf Tzadi Hey. It's the daf for Shabbat. Today's daf is sponsored by Rabbi Art Gould in memory of his beloved bride of 50 years, Carol J. Robinson, Karina Gola Bat Huda V'Yehuda Tzvi, on her second year at Tzed. Carol was the temple, the driving force, the glue that held our family together. No matter what happened, Carol knew what to do. Michal, Miriam, and I miss her terribly, even though she is in our thoughts every single day. Okay, we're going to get started now with, we were started with Sancheriv. We were talking about Sancheriv and how he took Eser Masaot the day he got to Jerusalem. He went through 10 places on that one day. It was like as we call it, a kvitzat derech. It was one of those, everything happened much quicker than it should have. And then we listed all those 10 places. And now we're going to have a bit of a discussion about those 10 places. So we said that three of the places mentioned aren't actually places because there were really 12, not 10. And then they said, oh, yeah, three of them really weren't. Obviously, there's a numerical issue here. We're going to have to get back to it because then it leaves us with only nine. And with that, we were up to Tzali Kolech Bat Galim. We said Naviu de Ka'amar Leknesi Israel. So this is the words of the Navi to Jewish people. Tzali Kolech Bat Galim. Bito shel Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov she'asu mitzvot ki galei hayam. Right, that's saying the daughters of our forefathers who did mitzvot like the waves of the sea. Hakshiva, Elisha, Mehalo Tistefe. Listen, don't be scared of him. Ela Istefe Nebuchadnezzar Harashad Mitil Ka'aryeh. In other words, the Laish is a lion. You should be scared of Nebuchadnezzar. He's like a lion. Don't worry about Sancheriv. He's the real person to worry about. And how do we know this? Shneimar Alak Aryeh Misubcho. Okay, the lion went up from its den, and that's a reference to Nebuchadnezzar, who's going to be the lion, which is Babylonia, and not Sancheriv. My Aniyah Anatot, Atid Yirmiyahu ben Chilkiah, Umenabeh ala Anatot. And in the future, Yirmiyahu is going to come and testify and prophesy, about Nebuchadnezzar, this lion that's going to come upon you. Dichtiv, as it says, Divrei Yirmiyahu ben Chilkiah, min haKohanim asher ba'Anatot be'eretz Binyamin. Because Yirmiyahu was from Anatot, and therefore Aniyah Anatot is not referring to the place, but it's referring to Yirmiyahu, who came from that place. Okay, so again, that goes back to the beginning where we said, this is all the Divrei HaNavi, who's telling the Jews, you Jewish people, right? Don't be scared of Sancheriv. What you really have to fear is Nebuchadnezzar going forward. So now the Gemara just asks a small question. Midame hatamari hachalayish. There it says it was a lion. Here it says a layish. Who says a layish is a lion? Well, they now say, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shisha Shemot Ligesh La'ari. There's 6 names to the lion. Eluhen, Ari, Kfir, Lavi, Layish, Shachal, Shachat. They're all references to a lion, and therefore the Layish is a reference to Nebuchadnezzar. But back to our question. But now we're missing one because we said there were 10 places that he went to, and now we got rid of 2 out of 12. We got rid of 3 out of 12, which gets us down to 9. So the answer, Abru Ma'abra Tartininu. Okay, it's because Avru Ma'abra are 2 different places. These are each names of places, and that way we get to 10. We thought it was 1, and now we see it's 2. My Od Hayom Benov La'amod. We now move to the next pasuk. The next pasuk says, Od Hayom Benov La'amod. What is Nov? Okay, by the way, we read this on Yom Ha'atzmaut. Nov was the city of the Kohanim. It was a place where David ran away from Shaul, hid there, then asked Nov Ira Kohanim, claimed he lied to them, claimed he was on a mission, and asked them for food. They gave him food. Then the Doega Edomi tattletales on them to Shaul HaMelech, and Shaul finds out, and basically they end up killing the whole city of Nov. Okay, so now we're going to get into that whole story. Okay, what is Nov here? And first of all, Nov is a place, so that would be an 11th place. But they say Amar Afuna. Now, the point is that the sin that they killed the people of Nov is connected with this story. Why is that? Amar Afuna Oto Yom Nishtayer Me'avona Shel Nov. This was the end of the punishment of Nov. Okay, the fact that they killed the whole city of people, or almost the whole city, we'll see, is the punishment. Okay, the punishment was not only on the people who ordered them to be killed and the people who killed them, but it was actually a sin on the nation, really, for letting this happen, for not stopping Shaul from doing it. Okay, there's all sorts of reasons why they connect this to a sin of the people. So Amrele Kaldai. So what happened was, before we get to the Kaldai, which are the ones who gaze at the stars, the astrologers who look for signs in the stars, basically there was a punishment put upon the Jewish people, and there was a clock ticking on it. At a certain point, it was going to be atoned for. And at what point? The day that Sancheriv comes to Jerusalem is the last day before it's going to expire. So the Chaldean, the ones who look at the stars, says, if you go right now, you'll be able to kill the Jewish people because this sin is upon them and they won't be able to fight you back. But if not, then you won't be able to because God will be on their side. In other words, today, you still have God against them because of this punishment. And now we get to this thing about the 10 places he went. It should have been a 10-day journey, but it all was cut into one day. He was able to do it quickly because of what the stargazers told him. Basically, in a minute he was there within the day. So they brought him mats, and mat upon mat upon mat upon mat, so he could be really high up. He stood from a high place, looked over the entire city. When he saw the whole city of Jerusalem, when he saw it, he said, this is Jerusalem that I've been hearing about for all these years? This is teeny. This is nothing. Amal, hello, dai kaltot Yerushalayim da'ala argishit kom shayata, v'alai kavishit kom medinata. This is the city of Jerusalem that I got all my chariots to come here, that I conquered all these other nations to be able to bring these huge armies. We're going to see how huge his army was at this point to conquer this city. Hello, it's teeny, the chalasha and weak, mikol karcha amamya. From all the other nations, the kavashi that I already conquered, bitkof yadi, when I was strong. This is a joke. Allah v'kam umani bereshe, he got up and basically nodded his head in contempt. Movil umayte biyade, and he with a gesture of his hand, kind of again contemptuously over the city. Al Tur Beit Mikdasha, onto where the Beit HaMikdash was, where the temple was, Debetzion in Zion, Valazarte to be Yerushalayim, and on the Azara in Jerusalem. And he said, come on, this is silliness. Amrei Nishtebe Yada Ha'ina. So they said, fine, let's go and attack it right now. Amar Lahu, he said to them, Tamhitu, you know what? Rest up. L'machar aitele kochav v'chan minaychu gome harag minei. Go rest up. You guys have been working for a long time. Listen, tomorrow, everybody just bring me one small piece, one small stone from the wall, and with that, we'll be done with the whole thing. Miyad vayhi balayla hahi. Okay, critical mistake. On that night, what happened? The pasuk says, okay, we're reading from the psukim now in Malachim Bet, chapter 19, verse 35. Vayitze malach Hashem, the angel of God went out, vayach b'machaneh Ashur, and attacked the camp of Ashur. 185,000 people were killed on that night. And they wake up in the morning and it's all dead bodies. Okay, you have to wonder who woke up and who was the dead bodies, right? But it sounds like maybe the Jews woke up in the morning and the whole Assyrian camp was dead. But we'll see, not everyone was dead, but most of them were dead. Amarav Papa Hainu Damre Nashe Bat Dina Batal Dina. Papa said, this is what people say if you leave the judgment to sleep overnight, if you don't deal with it that day, well, the whole judgment is canceled because look what happened. They pushed it off for a day and they didn't get to do what they set out to do. Now we're going to go on to a pasuk about Yishbi. Yishbi and Nov, okay, because we were talking about Nov. Now we're going back to the story of Nov, or something related to Nov. Yishbi ben Nov, Asher b'yilidei harafa. Okay, Yishbi was this giant. He was the brother of Goliath, and he was the Yilidei, the sons of the Rapha. This is the giant. Umishkal keno shlosh meot umishkal nechoshet. The weight of his spear was 300 shekels, 300 shekels worth of brass. Okay, this is how, right? These are all these exaggerated words about how big he was and how strong and how big his armor was. V'hu chagor chadasha. Okay, and it was a new, he was girded with new armor, and vayomer la'akot et David. His goal was, I'm going to slay David, who killed his brother Goliath. My Yishbi benov. Why does it say Yishbi benov? Amarav Yehuda. It wasn't really that he was from Nov, but Amarav Yehuda Amarav Ishaba al Iske Nov. He came because of what happened in Nov. Okay, so what does Yishbi have to do with what happened in Nov? Well, let's hear. Amar le'Kadosh Baruch Hu David. Ad matai ya'avon ze tamum biyadecha. For how long are you going to have this sin upon you? What sin? Al yadchan nehergan nov irakoni. Right? It was David's fault. The whole thing happened. First of all, he lied to them and said, he was on this mission and he needed food, and he didn't tell them the whole truth, and then the whole city got killed. So Al Yadchani tried Doeg Adomi, and then Doeg Adomi got into trouble for the whole thing. And remember Doeg Adomi, we saw him in the beginning. We'll see him later on. In the beginning of our chapter, he loses his chelik in Olam Haba because he ordered this killing of the city of Nov. So again, this is all your fault, indirect, but it's all your fault. Basically, you caused this whole thing to happen. And you, in the end, caused the death of Shaul and his 3 sons. Ritzoncha yichle zaracha otimaser b'yado. God gives him an ultimatum. You have 2 choices. Either your children can be wiped out, or you can be given over to your enemy. Amar lefanav ribbono shel olam mutav hamaser b'yado v'lo yichle zari. He says, you know what? I'd rather save my children, right? Like a good father, I'll sacrifice my life for my children's life. Give me over to my enemy. Yom echad denafik l'skor baza. So one day he goes out to hunt falcons. Ata Satan v'idme leketavia. So the Satan comes out and dresses himself up as a tzvi, as a, what do you call it, a deer. Patak begira v'lo matya. So he tries to shoot him, but he doesn't reach him. Mashre'ad itmei la'eretz plishtim. So he keeps chasing this deer, and the deer runs all the way to the city of the plishtim. Now the deer is not a deer; it's the Satan. Gets him to the city of the plishtim. Kedechazia Yishbi benov. Now, when Yishbi of Nov, again, he's not really of Nov, but he sees David, Amar, Hainu Haidakale Goliath Achi. Okay, now we're going to see how the whole issue of Nov, which got him this punishment, which now, right, he's going to be given into the hands of his enemy, who happens to be Yishbi. So Yishbi says, he's the guy who killed my brother Goliath. Kafte, he ties him up. Kamte, he puts him down. He folds him up. Sorry, he Kafte, he binds him up. He kamte, he doubles him over. Otve v'shadye tutibe badye, and then he puts him into an olive press. This looks like in one of those movies, almost like The Princess Bride or something. And he puts him under the olive press, and the olive press is about to go, crush him completely, and he's about to die. But it ave being nisa, but a miracle happens. Machale aramitote, the ground comes out from underneath him. And he's saved because when the olive press pounds down on him, he'll have space underneath, and he drops down. Hainu Dachtiv, where do we see a reference to this? In Tehillim, which is attributed to David, having written Tarchiv Tzadi Tachtai V'lo Ma'adu Karsulai, right? My steps widened underneath me, and my feet did not get crushed. Haul Yoma Apanya Demale Shabtav. Okay, it was Erev Shabbat. Avishai ben Tzruya, right? These things always happen on Erev Shabbat. Avishai ben Tzruya have a kayef reshe ba'arba garbe v'damaya. So Avishai ben Tzruya, who's the brother of Yoav ben Tzruya, who is Avishai is one of the strong men that worked with David, one of his strong soldiers. He was busy washing his hair for Shabbat with 4 garve of mayim, okay, 4 buckets of water, 4 something of water, some sort of measurement. Rashi brings 2 different options, what it means. But anyway, washing his hair. Chazinu kitme dama. Now he sees blood stains in the water as he's washing his hair. Igada amre. Some people say it wasn't that he saw. It was ata yona itraf kame. He sees a dove in front of him. Amar kines Yisrael yona imtala. Okay, so he sees a bird. Sorry, he sees this dove that flutters its wings in front of him. He says, "Oh wait, the Jewish people are compared to a dove." Okay, so there the Jewish people are compared to a dove. Shmamina David Malka Yisrael B'tzara Shari. So either this dove is fluttering his wings, looking like something's up, or he sees blood in the water when he's washing his hair. He realizes immediately that there's something wrong, and David HaMelech is in trouble. So what does he do? Right, stops in the middle of a shower, or right after he sees this dove, and he runs to David's house. Below Eshkachen, he doesn't find him there. Amal Tnan. Okay, so now he wants to take his mule to ride on it. But what's the problem? He starts quoting Mishnayot and starts getting caught up in halacha. Okay, classic, right? You got to go save David HaMelech, but there's some halachic issues here. Tnan, you can't ride on the horse of the king. You can't sit on his chair. You can't use his scepter. B'shat sakanamai, but maybe in shat sakana he could ride on his animal. Anta shal Beit Midrash, he goes to ask of the Beit Midrash. Okay, right, imagine the scene. David HaMelech is in dire straits, but got to ask of the Beit Midrash, got to figure out if this is allowed. Amrulei b'shat sakana shapir dami. Okay, Beit Midrash comes out with a clear answer. Yes, this is dangerous, a time of danger. You're allowed to do whatever you want. So, Rachve Leparde, he gets on his mule, Bekam, right on David's mule, Bekam va'azal, and he goes. Kaftzale Ara, again, we have a kvitzat derech. Immediately, right, this all happens in a snap. He gets there quickly. Bahade de kamaske, chazya arpa ime dahavya navla. So when he gets there, he sees Orpah, remember Orpah and Naomi, right? So they, right, they're sisters-in-law, but Orpah is the mother of Goliath. Okay, that's the whole crazy thing, right? Ruth is the grandmother of David, and Orpah is the mother of Goliath. So he sees her weaving. Now she's also the mother of Yishbi, or she's spinning. So now he says, Ki chazite psakta lepilka. Now when she saw him, she knew who he was. She stops what she's doing. Okay, her spinner, her what do you call it? The spindle, and shadite ilave, and she shoots it at him. Okay, so she basically, I just want to make sure I'm getting all the translation of the words right, even though we get the idea. But yeah, so she was spinning with the spindle, and she takes the spindle and she throws it at him. Okay, she's basically trying to kill him. So let's see if she's successful. So Savra Lamiktale, she wanted to kill him. Amrale, but then she misses him. So she says to him, Ulamai tili plak, can you bring me back my spindle? Like she makes it as if like, oh, I wasn't trying to kill you. It was just an accident. But he realizes what she was up to. Pat keberesh katla. So he picks it up, he throws it at her, right into her brains, and he kills her. Okay, that's the first thing. Kalchazi Yishbi benov. When he sees Yishbi and Nov, Amar hashtahabu beitchain. So now, what happens? Sorry. When Yishbi and Nov sees Avishai, he says, Hashahavu beitchain, v'kalani. He sees Avishai coming, and he says, they're going to be 2 against 1. They're going to get me. So he throws David up in the air. And he puts his spear into the ground. Amar he says, David will fall right onto the spear and die. So he throws David up in the air. David's about to fall down onto the spear and die. Second time he tries to kill him. Amar Avishai Shem. Avishai immediately uses the name of God to stop David. Ukme David ben Shmaya la'ara. David is now hanging in between the heavens and the earth. We've seen stories like this where people are mamash hanging in between the heaven and the earth. So first they ask us a question, why didn't David use the name of God to save himself? Okay, a prisoner can't get himself out of jail. Why is that? Because the key is outside and they're locked inside. So the point is that David wasn't able to utilize the name of God because he was in it. He was stuck. He couldn't even think that, oh, maybe this is a good way to do it. It's not like he couldn't technically do it. It didn't even occur to him. He was in the moment of, oh my God, I'm about to die. Who has time to start thinking about, oh, let's use the name of God. So now let's see what happens next. Amarle, my bait hachi. So now basically he's saved because he's kind of in the middle, in midair, but he's stopped there. And Avishai strikes up a conversation with David and says, how'd you get yourself to this situation? Amarle, because he's not really saved yet. He's actually like hanging in midair. And now the question is, what's going to be, right? What Avishai has done is to stop the death from coming right now, but he's still in midair. At some point, he's going to come down. So Avishai tries to figure out, really, he's not just striking up conversation, but he's trying to figure out, how am I going to deal with this situation? How are we going to get out of it? So he says, this is what God said to me. In other words, he said, because of Nov, you're going to get punished. Which way do you want to get punished? And this is what I told him. He says, switch your prayer. Bar Barach, Kira Lisbon. Let your son be a guy who deals with wax, which is kind of a disgusting job. Va'ad lo titstar, but who cares about your sons? Worry about yourself. We want to get you out of this situation. So forget about your sons. Just switch it and say you want to kill your sons instead. You want to wipe out your zera. Amarle ihachi saya bahadan. Hainu dichtiv, right? So then he says, okay, well then help me out. Hainu dichtiv vayazar lo Avishai ben Tzruyan. This is why the pasuk there says, okay, this is the pasuk in the section of Shmuel Bet, Parakaf Aleph Yud Zayim, when he goes to Yishbi, Yishbi Benov, it says, and then it says, Ve'azalo Avishai ben Tzruya, vayachet ha'peshli vayimiteyu. And then it says, okay, so basically, Avishai ben Tzruya helps him. This is how he helps him with his prayer and to switch the prayer. And then it says, and then he hits the Plishti and he kills him. This is Yishbi. And then it says, Aj nishba'u anshe David lomar lo tetzei od itanu l'milchama v'lo tachabet ner Yisrael. Okay, he will no longer come out to fight against us, and the candle of Israel will not be burned out. So, what are we going to darshan here? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Shasao b'tfilah. So what's vayazar lo? He helped him with the tfilah. And Amar Abishai Shem va'achte. Right. So now Abishai employs the name of God again, brings him down, but not onto the sword. Okay, and he's saved. Have a karadif batrayu. So now Yishbi is now chasing them to kill them. Kimata Kube, when they got to Kubi, they said, Kube, what's that mean? Oh, Kum Be. Let's stand up against him and fight against him. But they couldn't really do it yet. Kimata Beitre, when they got to the city of Beitre, which is the house of two, they said, Betray Gurian Katle Larye. With two cubs, we could kill the lion. Okay, and then they got up enough confidence to start attacking. Amrule, they said to him, Zil Eshekach Leor Pi'imech Bekivra. So to stop this Yishbi, who was a giant and very strong and running after them, they said, your mother, go find your mother in the grave. Now, he didn't know his mother was dead, right? They know because Abishai killed her. So, all of a sudden he got weak because he heard his mother died, and they found his weak spot. This is kind of like Goliath, right? He found the weak spot. It's the same kind of way he killed Goliath. He realized the weak spot and was able to get it because he wasn't strong enough really to kill Yishbi, but once he weakened him, he was able to. Hainu daftiv. Az nishbu anshe David lo lemor lo tetzei tanu l'malchama v'lo techbeh et ner Yisrael. And this is why they said, right, you shouldn't go to war anymore, and you will not go out to war anymore, and you will not put out the lamp of Israel. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. Now the Gemara brings a bright, okay, relating to this issue. Relating to one of the things we just saw. And now they say, there's three people who the path got shortened for them. Eliezer Eved Avraham, Eliezer the slave of Avraham, Yaakov Avinu, Avishai ben Tzruya. Okay, let's go through. Avishai ben Tzruya had Aram when he went to save David, which he did in the end. Okay, we haven't gotten back yet, which we'll get back to later. When does the children of David get punished, and what happened to the rest of that whole promise of Hashem? Eliezer Eved Abraham Dechtiv Avo Hayom Ala'ayim. When he goes to find a wife for Yitzchak, it says, and I came that day to the well. Now that day, meaning it all was a 1-day trip, even though it should have been much longer. L'meimra Da'hu Yom Hanafak. It sounds like that was the day he left. Okay, Yaakov Avinu Dechtiv, turning out on a bed. By Yaakov it says Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva Vayelech Harana. Uchtiv, right? So when Yaakov goes, he leaves from Beersheva, he goes to Haran. This is when he's running away from Esav. Uchtiv vayifga b'makom vayalan sham, and then it says, and he went to sleep there in that place. Kiva Shemesh. Now that's Beit El, but there's something not right here because he went to Haran and then he went back to Beit El. It doesn't make any sense. The path he took should have gone Beersheva, Beit El, Haran. So something doesn't jive. So they say, well, kimata leCharan amal efshar avarti al makom shitpalu bo avatay v'ani lo itpalalti bo. When he got to Haran, he realized, oh my goodness, I passed a place where my fathers davened, and I didn't do anything there. How could that be? And by Lemehadar, he asked if he could go back. Kevan dir herbedate Lemehadar kaftzale ara. And the whole vayifga b'makom means he got there very quickly. So basically, he went all the way to Haran and then back to Beit El, and that all happened in 1 day. Tavar here, a different translation of vayifga b'makom. Empgia elat tefila. This is famous. This comes from that Yaakov was attributed that he instituted tefillah mincha because of this empgia tefillah, pgia tefillah. How do we know this? Shenemar. This is from Masechet Brachot. Ata al titpalel ba'am hazeh, ba'al tisa ba'adam rinau tefillah, ba'al tifga bi. Okay, so it's basically saying it's this pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyahu. Don't pray for this nation. Don't do a rina or tefillah. Al tifga bi. Don't beg me, right? Basically, okay, in prayer. Vayalan sham ki b'hashemesh. So now it says there he went to sleep because the sun came down. So now what's weird about this? So we'll see. Batar ditzale by the mahadar. So now after he prayed, he wanted to leave and go back to Haran. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Tzaddik, but zeh ba'al beit meloni pater b'lo. God says he came to my hotel. What? He's not going to sleep here for the night? Like that's a slap in my face. Of course he's going to sleep here for the night. Miyad ba hashemesh. In other words, they're saying the sun came for him. The sun went down for him. Okay? Basically, God made the sun go down in order to make sure that Yaakov slept there and that it was too dark and he couldn't go on his way. V'hainu dichtiv, and this explains the pasuk vayizrach lo hashemesh. Okay, this is when he fights with Esav. Vayizrach lo hashemesh. So here they say v'chi lo bilvad zarcha. What did the sun? What does it mean? Vayizrach lo hashemesh. The sun rose for him. Okay, they're now going to learn from there to this sun setting, and they're going to make a comparison. So here it just says the sun set, but there it says the sun rose for him. So they say, what? It rose just for him? What do you mean? The sun rises for everybody. Hello, it rises for the whole world. The sun that set for him also rose for him. Okay, so that's the right. So there it went down for him in order to make sure he slept in Bethel, and there it went up for him in order to help him cure him from his fight with the angel. Uminalan dekala zar'e de David. Okay, now we go back to where do we see that David's children were wiped out? Dichtiv. So now fast forward a number of kings, and we're now at the son of Achaziah, who's the son. The king is Achaziah. He's the son of Yehoshaphat. Atalia em Achaziah ataki met banana. What happens? They're kind of together. Melech Israel and Melech Yehuda. Do you remember Yehoshaphat marries into the family, and then there's this connection with Yehoshaphat and Achav, and now we have the son of Achav and the son of Yehoshaphat. And Yehu comes to kill the son of Achav, and then Yoram, and then there's Yoram, and there's Achaziah, and then Yehu also kills Achaziah. When he comes there, he sees Achaziah is with the king of Israel, and he kills Achaziah also. And then Atalia, the mother of Achaziah, Ra'ata kimet banan, she realized I can become queen. So what does she do? Et kol zera hamamlaka. She wipes out all the children. Okay? But what happened? If you remember, the Kohen hid one of them, which is Yoash, and he eventually becomes the king. So they say that's when all his tzatzaim were wiped out. Because again, it's all the ones that were like part of Shlomo, which is the king, and right, all the sons of Shlomo, sons of them that were in the king. It wasn't all his zera, it was the ones that were meant to be kings. But then the Gemara says, V'ha'ishtayr le'Yoash, but Yoash was left. So they weren't all wiped out. This isn't the fulfillment of the promise of God, the punishment. Well, Hatam Nami Yishtar Evyatar. Well, also in Nov, they left Evyatar. They killed all the Kohanim, but they left Evyatar, one of them. Dirtivi Amalek ben Echad la'Achimelech ben Achituv u'shmo Evyatar. So one of them was saved. So here you have Midah keneged Midah, and we're going to see this right now. Amar of Yehuda Marav. Ilmalei lo nishter Evyatar la'Achimelech ben Achituv lo nishter mizarosh shel David sarid upalit. Okay, if they hadn't left over that one, then David wouldn't have been left with one, and therefore, right, it was on account of that one that ran away, David Hamelech's dynasty was saved. Amar Rav Yuda Amar Rav. Now we're back to Sancheriv. Okay, we got from Sancheriv where we mentioned Nov because that came up in the pasuk, and then from Nov we got to David and how he was punished because of Nov, and now we're back to Sancheriv. Ba'alehem Sancheriv harasha ב-45,000 b'nei melachim, 1,000 ish b'nei melachim yoshvim b'kronot shel zahav. Okay, so he came with 45,000, right? 45,000 ish, okay? Sons of kings. 45,000 sons of kings who were sitting in kronot of zahav. They were sitting in chariots of gold. Imahem shiglonot vizonot. They had all these women and prostitutes with them. Ubishmonim elef giburim levushe shiryon klipa. They had 80,000 strong people, like warriors, wearing armor. Ubishishim elef achuzei cherev ratzim lefanav. And then they had 60,000 more holding swords. Vashar parashim and everyone else were horsemen. V'chein ba'o al Avraham. V'chein atidim lavo Gog uMagog. Okay, this is the same number of people, magically, okay, the same number of people of the 4 kings against the 5 kings when they came up against Abram, 4 kings against Abram, and in Gog uMagog, it's going to be the same number of people. Okay, they're basically comparing these 3 battles to each other. B'manitatan, in a Braita it says, Orech Machane or Arbameo Parseh, his whole camp of people, 400 parasang long, that's very long. Rochav Tzavar Susav Arba'im Parseh, 40 parsa long was the width of the necks of all of his horses lined up. Sach Machaneu Matayim V'Shishim Ribo Alafim Chaser Chad. The entire camp was 260,000, right? Ribo Alafim Chaser Chad. Okay, this number comes out to 2,600,000,000 people. Okay, this is a clear exaggerated number. Okay, but minus one, they say. Okay, so now baya chaser chad ribo, is it missing one means 1/10,000, or o chaser chad alpha, or 1,000, o chaser mea, or maybe 100, o chaser chad, or was it minus one person, which would be crazy, and that's such a big number. We don't know the answer to that question. Okay, Tana Rishonim avru b'schi, the first ones. Now, this is another midrash, basically coming to darshaning psukim, but saying how many people Sancheriv had in his camp. First, they went through the water. Now, they had to cross the Jordan to get into Israel. So first, the first ones had to swim. Now, imagine so many people go into the water and swim. What happens? The water is displaced, and it's not there anymore. So first they're going to say, how do we know? First, they had to go swimming. Okay, this is a pasuk from Yeshayahu, which is talking about Sancheriv, and it's actually not about Sancheriv specifically, but it's talking about the Assyrians. So they attribute this to Sancheriv's people. Okay, it means they got all wet and they had to swim. The other ones stood up because already so much water was displaced that they walked through while standing. And that's the continuation of that pasuk. The other ones, it was already all dried up because all the people who went through, again, displaced more water, and they couldn't even find water in the river to drink until they brought water from somewhere else and drank from there. Okay, here's this pasuk about them having to dig to get water. Okay, okay, so they're basically learning from there that they had to dig up to get water. V'haktiv, vayitze malach Hashem, vayekeh b'machane Ashur 185,000. Wait a minute. You said there were 2,600,000 people. But it says that they killed them all. They were all dead. And there were 185,000. So how could you get to 2,600,000? The people that they counted that had died were just the heads. Those were just the heads of the people, but the important people. But they killed more. They just didn't mention them. Okay, this is a pasuk in Yeshayahu where it says God's going to put in their fat ones. He's going to make them thin, basically, mean kill the important ones. The fat ones are the better ones. The important ones. Okay, this is also saying, right? God sent a malach and he killed all the warriors, the strong people. Right, and then he goes to the house of his God, and came out of the king, basically, and that's who he slew. Shema mina. Okay, from here you see the people that were slain were the heads of the people, and that's why the numbers are okay. But Mehi came. What did this malach hit them with? Okay, what strength, what power? So Rabbi Eliezer Omer biyad hikam. This is going to sound very similar to the Yad HaChazakah in Mitzrayim, and we're going to compare it also to Egypt in a few ways. So Rabbi Eliezer says it was with the hand. We're going to see a bunch of different interpretations. Shenamar v'yar Yisrael et hayad ha'gdola. Hayad ha'atidat lipara misancheriv. The saying is when they saw the big hand. What big hand? The big hand that they're going to see some other time in the future as well. Otherwise, we just said Yad Gdola. Why does it say the great hand? Because it was the hand they're going to see when God deals, right, save them from Sancheriv. Rabbi Yoshua Omer be'etzbi hikam. It was just a finger, right? Like it was very easy for God. All he had to do was lift a finger, and that in that way. Shneimar vayomer achartumim paro etzba Elohimi. He etzba shatidali parami Sancheriv. Right? In the Makak Kinim, what did the Chartumim, the sorcerers of Paro said? Oh, it's the finger of God. So here you see the finger. Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omeil. Amar lo Kadosh Baruch Hu leGavriel Magalcha Netusha. Your sickle is up there. Amar lefanav ribono shalom nitushava omedet misheshet yemei breshit. Okay, your sickle, right, is ready. He says to Gavriel. Gavriel is the one who went out to fight for them. So he said it's been waiting from the 6 days of creation for this moment of the battle with Sancheriv. Shenemar mipnei charavot nadadu. Okay, because of the cherev, they had to wander. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Oto perek zman bishul perot haya. It was the time when the fruits were ripened, and Gavriel is the angel in charge of the fruits. Amar lo kadosh baruch hu leGavriel, k'shata yotzei levashel perot tizakek lehem. Listen, when you're on your way to deal with the fruits, just deal with them also, okay? שנאמר, מדי עוברו ייקח אתכם, כי בבוקר יעבור ביום ובלילה, והיה רק זוועה הבין שמועה. Okay, this is saying, when you're already going to do something else, deal with it. It's almost like, again, it was like a second thought, like this wasn't such a big deal, even though it was obviously a huge deal, but it wasn't hard. Amar of Papa Hainu Damri, Nashe Agav Orcha, the Baal Devavach Ishtama. Okay, when you're on your way, go to the, knock on the door. When you're on the way, one second, let me write, listen, Acha Hitra Evachido. When you're on your way to do something else, just show your face to your enemy and, deal with it. Some people say he blew into his nose and they died. Okay, because there's another pasuk and he blew into them and they dried out, like were, withered. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amal, kapayim sapak lehem v'metu. He clapped his hand and they died. Shneimar v'gamani akeh kapil kapiv anichoti chamati. Okay, I can clap my hands and my anger will subside. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Amar Oznaim gila lehem v'shamu shira mipi chayot v'metu. He just made their ears hear things and then they heard the animals singing and that made them die. Shneimar miroma mutcha naptsu goyim. He heard the animals praising God and that caused their death. And that comes out from this pasuk, mirom mutcha, when they were lifting you up, napsu goyim, all the goyim died. How many were left from this whole thing? Rav Amar Asara, right, out of the 2,600,000, if we take that 600 million, 2,600,000,000, if we take that number seriously, only 10 were left. Shnema ushar etziaro mispal yihyev v'nar yichtavim. It'll be a number left, and a child will write it down. Now, what numbers can a child add up to? 10. Kamanar yachol lichtov, right? How much can a child write? Asara, 10. Ushmuel amar, tisha, 9, shene'amar, v'nish'ar bo olilot, kinokef zayid. Okay, there were left a few little grapes, like what's left from the olives. Shnayim, shlosha, gargarim, b'rosh amir, 2 or 3 seeds at the head of a bundle. I think that's a bundle, maybe something else. Arba'ah, v'chamisha b'sifeha, 4 or 5 on their branches or coming out of it. Okay, so what does this mean? 4 or 5? Oh, 4 plus 5 equals 9. Now they ignore the 2 and 3. You'll see the next opinion doesn't. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi Omer Arba Asal, because he counts. Shenema, Shnayim, Shlosha, Arba, V'chamisha. And he adds them all up together, gets to 14. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chamisha. Who are the Chamisha? Now, instead of saying there's Chamisha because of something it says, he's now going to say, because look who was left. Sancheriv, he himself survived. Ushne Banav, his 2 sons, Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuzaradan. Apparently they were there as well, even though they're Babylonians, they're Assyrians, but they were apparently there at the same time, and we're going to see all this right now. Nebuzaradan Gemara. Okay, Nebuzaradan was the army officer, the officer of Nebuchadnezzar in the destruction. And they're basically saying, oh, there's a tradition that he was there at the time. Nebuchadnezzar, how do we know? Dichtiv, urevei dereviata dame lebar elahan. Okay, so now by Nebuchadnezzar it says, right, it says, and the appearance of the 4th is like that of an angel. Okay, this is in Daniel. It looks like an angel. Now, he says, this is Nebuchadnezzar saying this about his dream. Now, the point is that if he had not seen the angel, when did he see the angel? When the angel came to Sancheriv. Because if he hadn't seen an angel, how does he know to identify an angel? Must be he saw it. When would he have seen it? If not, when the angel came to smite Sancheriv's people. Okay, so therefore he must have been Sancheriv v'shnei banav. How do we know that they didn't die? Because they appear later. Okay, Sancheriv gets killed by his own sons. And there you see that his 2 sons must have survived, and so did he. Okay. Amar Rabbi Abahu. Ilmalei mikra katuv If this pasuk hadn't been written, I wouldn't be able to say it because it sounds really humiliating to God or derogatory to God. Dechtiv, Bayom hahu yigalach Adonai betal haschira be'evrei nahar b'melech Ashur et harosh v'se'ar ha'raglayim v'gam et hazakan tispeh. God basically, it's prophecy that God is saying that God is going to personally shave the hair off of Sancheriv's body. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Why would God stoop down to do such a thing? So what's the story? Well, God came and appeared like an old man. Okay, when you go to the kings of the east and the west whose children you killed in the war, basically because you brought them to work in your army and they got killed, right? So when you go to those people, what are you going to say to them? To which Sancheriv says, I live in fear of what am I going to say to them when I see them? How can I explain how I sent all their children to the slaughter by engaging in this war? Okay, we're going to end with that crazy note of, that's a difficult thing. Anyone who really goes out to war, middle of a war, we can understand, right? Somebody has to account for the fact that people's children were killed. And that's a big issue that's going on currently in Israel. Anyway, without getting, again, political or anything, but it's hard to read this without thinking about that. Okay, so what did we do today? We started with Sancheriv, we ended with Sancheriv. In the middle, we got sidetracked with Nov and David and how he was punished for what happened in Nov. And first, it was almost he was going to get punished, and that explains the whole Yishbi story. But then he ends up switching it, and then that comes to explain why his children almost got completely wiped out. They weren't completely because, again, there was one person left in Nov, so therefore one of his sons was left, and he continued to be the next king. That was Yoash. And then we got into, how the Jews won the battle with Sancheriv, and basically how Sancheriv, his arrogance, caused his downfall because they said, oh, we don't need to do this today. Jerusalem's so small. And then they pushed it off, and then the Avon of Nov was already done. And then he basically couldn't win anymore. The Malach came at night, smote them. We had with the hand, with the finger, with clapping, all different kind of methods about, which you have to think about what exactly the significance of all that is. And then, that we had the exaggerated numbers of how many people really were there. And then we ended with how many people were left. With that, we finished for today. And then we ended with this one thing that we're going to get back to tomorrow about how God shaves Sancheriv, which is a weird thing, but we're going to get back to that. And then we started with this interaction. We were left with this big question of what is Sancheriv? God says to him, what are you going to say to all those people when they ask, where are my children and why were they killed in war? With that, we're finished for today. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov.